Our last story is going to really segue really well into our second story here. And I believe Scott's going to lead us into that. So take it away,
sure.
Scott.
Yeah. This is it's almost like a mirror image of the previous article that we read, although from a different perspective, which I think is very refreshing. This is an article called "Americans Who Aren't Sure About God Are a Fast Growing Force in Politics, and They're Typically Even More Politically Active Than White Evangelicals." That was not the article, that was the title. And so this was on theconversation.com a couple days ago on October 27th, and it was authored by Dr. Ryan Burge. And I just want to throw a quick note in here. At the top of the article, Dr. Burge gave a disclaimer. Apparently he's involved. He's the director of research of Faith Counts, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy group. And he also gave a presentation to the Congressional Free Thought Caucus this past summer. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of his work, and I want to give him a kudos for showing your biases at the beginning of your article. But the content of the article, it really was about two things, and there were things that you could figure out from the title there. The first one was that non-believers are becoming more and more of the voting population. And that the second point, though, was that it's they're engaged at a higher rate than some other groups that might be surprising. And so, well, we can go into some of the details here if we like, or does anybody want to have anything to say before we start getting down and dirty here?
Well, it was inevitable. It was going to happen. You have a two-party system, and it's a polarizing system. So you were going to have subgroups in that system polarize themselves, and you're going to have one group with their nice polarized section, and you're going to have the other group with their nice polarized section that are going to be really fired up and really engaged. On the one side, you have your white evangelical Christian. And on the other side, you now have your multiracial, left-leaning, religiously agnostic or atheist on the other side. And it was bound to happen because the two-party system that you've got in America leaves very little in the middle. And that middle has got smaller and smaller and smaller. So what's been required to do is that the outsides have got further and further apart. And that was inevitable in a two-party system that America has. And it's something that was not going to say by design, but it was something that was going to be the end point of any two-party system. Because one party is going to have the way that it structures itself, and the other party is going to have the way that it structures itself, and you're going to have, and they're going to do that. And they're going to do that again, and they're going to do that again and again and again. And eventually, you're going to destroy the people in the middle, and you're going to end up with, instead of hitting here, you're going to hit here and then here, because you've then got rid of everything else. You've got further and further to the extremes. And it's crazy that we're now seeing the product of this is, well, more people like us getting more and more active. And Kelley has got more active, and I just wondered how active Jerome's getting in wherever Jerome is.
I'm currently in Hawaii, so not very active, but definitely paying more attention, which is something that I do take some solace in. Like, that's one of those glass half empty type of things, because with everything that's been happening, it's hard for the people that have been asleep most of this time to stay that way. Like, you kind of have to tune into it. So that's one positive that's coming out of all of the insanity. But I mean, I think us as atheists being more engaged, like you said, Phoebe, it's inevitable, because historically you look at people who are the most marginalized, the people who are, I guess, affected the most negatively by societal norms. Those are the people that are going to be engaged, because the people at the top, the people who are prospering, they're not going to fight against their own prosperity like that. It's common sense in a way. So yeah, like you said, I believe that it was inevitable. Scott, how do you feel about it?
I totally agree that that's dead on right there. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, it's the people that are unhappy with the way things are. They're the ones who are going to be saying, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm not happy with the way things are." You know, the people that want to just keep going down the road that we're going. Just like there, that's the don't rock the boat group, right? That's the let's keep the status quo group. And so although the study did show that atheists were more engaged than white evangelicals, you know, how much of that is just that white evangelicals are much more invested in the status quo than atheists as a group. And so it leaves us room to be to like hang our hat on something to say, yeah, we're politically active, but that's because we have to be, right? We have to be. It was inevitable. You know, you push somebody down, you take away somebody's rights, and let's be honest, I'm a white middle class American man, and so you know, to hear me talking about that is almost laughable. But I am an atheist, and so I can see things that that need to be said, is reflecting on myself, in addition to you know, people in my community, and so it's not unexpected at all. And but I do think that there is, while I think neither of the results from this study were surprising, yeah, you're going to expect atheists to side more with Democrats. I think the numbers were that since 2008, when they started taking the survey, the percentage of Republicans that were atheists has stayed pretty steady at about 3 or 4% all the way across. And then for Democrats, though, it was at 12% in 2008 and 20% now in or 2021, I guess was the last year. And so we're seeing a big change. It's that two-party system that you were talking about, Phoebe. It's the atheist has to go somewhere. It's not like it's just another thing that we can use to delineate ourselves, that we can say, this is my party, this is not my party, this is your party, you go over there, I'm over here. And so it's I have mixed emotions when I read things like this. However, at the very least, it's raising awareness. It's bringing things out so that people can listen to them, learn about it, can talk about it with people that they find interesting and have interesting perspectives. And there is room for hope there. Kelley, tell me about your hope here.
Well, you know what? I was actually really heartened to see that per capita as a group, we are more politically active than Christian evangelicals. That is really hopeful. Now we just have to work on getting the same numbers in the population as they have, right? They're running about 10% higher in population at present than the nuns, and that's a lot of people. It doesn't sound like much, only 10%, but that's hundreds of millions. That's 100 million or more people. And that isn't even counting all the other Christians. That's just counting the Christian evangelicals, right? So we've got a lot of work to do to spread the ideas of atheism, agnosticism, humanism, atheism, before we're as large a force in American politics today as the evangelicals are. However, those of us who are old enough to remember the days of Reagan and when the moral majority started under Ralph Reed, it looked a lot. That movement in its beginning looked a lot like our movement today. And I think that's where we could be headed to that same amount of power in the future. And I think we could do it a lot quicker than the evangelicals did. So it took them 40 years to take over the Supreme Court. I think we can. I mean, the Supreme Court's a little bit harder because we're not going to take that over quickly because we're relying on people's being there forever. But I think we can change the face of politics in the next 20 years if we really work hard at it. And it's just taking the time and doing it. It's work, and you have to do the work. But if you can spread it out, I mean, if you do 2 hours of work a week and work with an organization of 19 other people who also do 2 hours of work a week, that's 40 hours. That's one full-time job. And all you did was 2 hours of work. That's not so bad. So that's what we need to do, is get up and start making things happen. So Phoebe, do you have more? I know you have more to say on the subject. Go ahead.
I think what we're seeing here is the end of the default that was 1950s America. 1950s America, especially me looking in as an outsider, we're a very religious country. And you're seeing a backlash against that by the polarization. And you've got to be careful, though, that you don't create a section of people that are rose-tinted, spectacle-wearing, nostalgia-wank, engaging individuals that don't want any change and will do anything at any cost. Because we, unfortunately, have had that in the UK. We have had a growing group of rose-tinted spectacles wearing people that hark back to a time that only exists in their head and talk about things that don't actually, have any semblance of reality. So you need in America to stem that from happening. But it's not going to be easy because you will have those people that exist. Because, America elected a non-white president, yet the Klan still exist. It didn't get rid of the Klan. They still exist, but they are a marginalized group. And I think that is something that is going to have to be pushed towards so that you don't end up with things that happened in things like the Unite the Right rally. We need to prevent those things from happening again as the backlash to the progress that's being made, because these people have got in their heads these things that are going, well, when I remember this, that, and the other. No, that doesn't actually exist. You just put on these imaginary rose-tinted spectacles and look like John Lennon and think that John Lennon was the greatest person that ever lived because of those spectacles he was wearing, and you're now creating nonsense. And what more do you want? And I can't really say much more, but, I don't know how America's actually going to be in the future, but, yeah, I'm not quite sure marginalized is the correct word here, but it's a feeling I've got. Does anyone want to take that feeling and run with it?
I would say that they certainly feel marginalized. I think it's something that like that type of that group, I don't even know how to describe them, but that group, that section of society, they are coming more and more out with this persecution complex. So that's what I think would be a better way of putting it. It's a persecution complex because, like we were all just saying, like the people that are the most prosperous, the people that pretty much benefit the most from society as it is, they're usually Christians in America, white males in America. So for them to be a good Christian, persecution kind of has to come with it, because that's what makes you a real Christian. Like, I'm one of the 12, I'm being persecuted. So you see a lot more in society of people making up their own persecution to fight against. So that's why I feel like that's why conspiracies are more rampant now, because there's this shadow figure off in the distance and he's influencing everything. And it's like, okay, dude, do you have any proof of that? But you have to remember that you're not talking to people that are entirely rational. I would just say it like that. They don't come from it from a rationale standpoint. It's all emotion. So going off of that, it's more likely to see that marginalization, that persecution complex coming out. So yeah.
It's an imperfect word, but I think that's a problem with the English language. We haven't quite got the sheer number of words that other languages have, and I think that's
How about mismarginalization?
Yeah, I'll take that one.
But after reading all this, it got me thinking about what about the conservative atheists? We know they exist. We know they're out there. I want to hear what they have to say. I mean, yes, it's great that the atheist voice is gaining more attention, but it's gaining more on one side than on the other. And so it's becoming one of those sticking points. It's becoming a partisan issue. And so as long as the gains that we make are tied to party affiliation, it's just going to fan those flames. And so, that's what my question is, how do we make atheism into a non-partisan issue, at least politically? Maybe it goes back to, Kelley, what you were talking before about having a more ambassadorial approach. It's about making connections and rather than, causing divide.
And yeah, and not only that, but it's also showing these conservatives that they don't have to give up their conservative values if they don't want to, just because they stop believing in a God, right?
Right.
That their values and their morals don't come from their God; they come from their own perceived notions of how they want their society to work. So they can give up the idea of a deity overseeing everything that they do, and still keep their conservative ideals if they want to, right? I mean, I personally don't agree with those ideals, but it's a possibility for them to do that. And I think that you're right. I mean, if we can get some of the more people who are conservatives to stop giving up their belief in God, that we might be able to have more power as atheists, right? One of the problems, I think, though, is that a lot of people who open up their minds to the concept of atheism also open up their minds to a lot of other things as well, right? And that's where, yeah, right. See, that's the problem with getting conservative atheists, is that atheists tend to drift liberal as time goes on. There's a pretty famous podcaster who I remembered starting out had a lot of conservative ideas, and as just within 2 years he became a complete liberal on his podcast. So so that's the big problem with, but we can get these conservatives to kind of get the ball rolling and get the idea started, and maybe we'll catch them in two ways. We'll catch them in the atheism respect and catch them again in the socially liberal respects too. It just might take a little bit longer for one or the other.
Baby steps.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
what we have to be
right,
careful,
right.
but we have to be careful that we're picking fights correctly. Because as they say, never pick a fight with somebody who's purchased ink by the barrel. And some media outlets in America have purchased ink by the barrel, metaphorically speaking, and they, have lots of it to get rid of. And we need to ensure that we're picking fights in the right way so that we're not just wading through ink being thrown at us because that's all they've got to do. We need to make sure that we're picking the fights in the right way. And are we reaching out to a broad range of people, or are we just becoming that echo chamber again and again? And are we now going, hey, look, I've got this ink, it's by the barrel. We need to make sure that, oh, well, that ink by the barrel, send it back.